Amidst the Appalachian mountains, hidden secrets await. Prepare to embark on a journey into its dark and twisted history of Appalachia. Time to face the horrors of Appalachia's deadliest family. Back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, folks used to see Appalachia as this wild, lawless place, kind of like the Wild West. You had these big, tough family clans running the show, and nobody could really mess with them. Sure, there were sheriffs and judges around, but they didn't have much say when it came to these heavily armed Appalachian families. These clans were led by hot-headed, gun-toting guys who didn't mind settling things with a brawl or a shootout. They were so infamous that even the actual law was scared of them. By 1910, it was clear that there were basically two legal systems duking it out in the rough Appalachian mountains. One of these systems was the outlaw Appalachian justice, where people basically took justice into their own hands, usually ending up in a lot of bloodshed as they settled scores. On the flip side, you had the official legal system, run by elected politicians and career cops. Their job was to catch the bad guys and use courts to hand out punishment. So it was bound to happen, and in 1912 it did. What went down next is written in the history books as the craziest courtroom shootout ever seen in the U.S., right smack in the middle of Appalachia. This brutal clash between the deep-rooted Appalachian clan justice and the regular legal system was a game-changer for the region. It left a mark that you can still feel in the culture and society of Appalachia today. After the dust settled, people started wondering about how much power the regular legal system should have compared to the old-school frontier justice. And those questions stuck around, becoming a part of the region's memory that still hangs in the air even now. All right, now let's dive into the nitty-gritty of this intriguing story and understand that the 1912 courthouse massacre isn't just some old history lesson. It's a tale that still hits close to home in Appalachia. So, back in the day, around 1911 in rural Virginia, folks had this thing for shucking corn. It was a big deal, especially during harvest time. To make the work easier, farmers would invite their neighbors over. Guys would gather outside to shuck corn while the ladies handled cooking, and the young girls either helped with food or did some quilting. It was more than just work. It was a time to hang out and bond in their close-knit community. Now, in the middle of all this corn shucking and quilting, the young folks found ways to entertain themselves. One game they played was Shake the Cat. It was a playful little game where they'd gently bounce a cat on a quilt held by two boys and two girls. Depending on which way the cat darted, a boy got to choose which girl to smooch. You can bet there was a lot of laughter and fun with this age-old tradition. Meanwhile, the older guys and boys were having their own competition on the porch. They were seeing who could shuck a bushel of corn the fastest, all while keeping an eye out for those rare red-colored corn kernels. Finding one of those crimson gems meant something special. The guy who found it got to pick a girl for a pre-dinner kiss. Now, in the case of the 1912 courthouse massacre, a young guy named Wesley Edwards found one of those red ears of corn. But here's the twist. His choice of who to kiss ended up sparking a chain of events that led to a tragic and bloody showdown. Something as innocent as picking the wrong girl to kiss turned into a history-changing moment in rural Virginia. Crazy how life can take unexpected turns, huh? You see, this girl was already seeing another guy, and that kiss set off a whole chain of events that still gives folks in Appalachia the creeps today. Now, Wesley Edwards was part of one of the most powerful clans in the history of Appalachia, the Allens. These folks had been running the show in these remote mountains since the Civil War wrapped up in the 1860s. Their leader back then was Jerry Allen, a Confederate Civil War vet who, according to the newspapers of the time, had a reputation for beating people to a pulp with his bare hands. Yeah, he was one scary dude, but also a big shot in town. The Allen clan had it all: fancy houses, huge chunks of land, and successful stores. They even dabbled in politics, proud Southern Democrats in a mostly Republican county. For about 50 years, they were known as the Appalachian Outlaws, who settled their problems with fists and guns. By 1910, The head honcho of the clan was Floyd Allen, one of Jerry Allen's 7 kids. Floyd was a big, imposing fellow with a bushy mustache. He made his living running a shop and farming. You know, the kind of guy you'd expect to lead a clan like that. Some folks loved him. Others couldn't stand him. He had a reputation for being both generous and hot-tempered. Floyd had quite the rap sheet, but he always seemed to get off easy thanks to his political connections. For instance, back in 1904, he got slapped with a conviction for shooting his neighbor in a land dispute. The jury hit him with a $100 fine and just 1 hour in jail. Why? Well, people were scared the Allens would go after the judge or the jury if they handed down a harsher punishment. After that, Virginia's governor, Andrew Jackson, swooped in and pardoned Floyd. Then Floyd made the guy he shot pay that $100 fine, or he threatened to shoot him again. But that wasn't the only wild incident. Floyd and his brother Jack once got into a shouting match over their old man's estate. Floyd shot Jack in the head, but the bullet bounced off his skull. In return, Jack shot Floyd in the chest. Floyd collapsed on a mattress, bleeding out, and just when you thought he was a goner, Jack took pity on him and put down his gun. But Floyd wasn't done. He pulled a pistol from under that mattress and unloaded every bullet into Jack's chest. When he ran out of bullets, he started pistol whipping him. Floyd took a beating himself, got shot in the chest, and just about died. Most folks figured he was just too darn stubborn to kick the bucket. In all his years of violence, he'd been shot 13 times in fights. Crazy, right? Now, when Floyd shot his own brother, he got hit with that same old $100 fine and just an hour in the slammer. But let me tell you, Floyd had some serious confidence in himself. He bragged that he'd never see the inside of a jail cell as long as he had blood pumping through his veins. Newspapers from back then even claimed that the Allen family had this cocky motto: "No Allen will ever see the inside of a jail." Yep, it was all about family pride for these folks. They even had federal officials shaking in their boots. One time, a federal agent tried to show Floyd a warrant to search his wagon for illegal moonshine, but Floyd wasn't having it. He told the agent, "This paper lets you get in that wagon, but it doesn't guarantee you're coming out alive." Scared for his life, the agent got the hint and hightailed it out of there. Despite his rap sheet, Floyd Allen was often made a deputy by the local law. But even in that role, there were plenty of complaints about him roughing up prisoners who tried to make a run for it while he was their deputy. In plain terms, Floyd Allen was one of the meanest, most violent dudes in a family of violent outlaws. They thought they were untouchable, and everyone in town was flat out terrified of them. And get this, the fella who planted that kiss at the corn shucking? That was Wesley Edwards, Floyd Allen's nephew. Now, the very next day after that corn shucking, they were all at church. Wesley bumped into the boyfriend of the girl he'd kissed, and that fella was fuming mad. Once church was over, Wesley and his brother didn't waste any time. They whipped out their pistols and took turns, beating that guy almost senseless. Both of them got slapped with charges for felony assault and messing with a worship service. When Uncle Floyd heard about these charges, oh boy, he was livid. He told the boys to skip town, head to North Carolina, where they couldn't get nabbed, while he worked his magic to get the charges dropped. But here's the twist. A sheriff got wind of it and had a warrant drawn up to bring those boys back. They hogtied them and hitched them to the back of a wagon to haul them back to Virginia. Now, funny coincidence, that road to town passed right in front of Floyd Allen's house. When Floyd saw his nephews all tied up like pigs for slaughter, he demanded they be let go, but the deputies weren't budging. Big mistake. Floyd just whipped out his pistol and gave those deputies a good old whooping. Then he untied his nephews like it was no big deal. Next day, he took them to court, they got convicted, and served short sentences. But Floyd now had a bigger headache on his hands. He was facing assault charges and charges for busting those boys out. It seemed like the sheriff and the local politicians had had enough of his cowboy-style justice, and they were ready to prove once and for all that they were the real law in town, not the almighty Allen clan. So, on March 13, 1912, Floyd Allen found himself back in court, facing felony assault charges yet again. This time, they slapped him with a guilty verdict on all counts and scheduled his sentencing for the next day. Word spread like wildfire in town, and folks knew trouble was brewing. I mean, someone even sent a note to the judge, handwritten and all, that basically said, "If you put Floyd in jail, we'll take out the judge before sunset." Come morning on March 14th, the whole town was jittery. You could feel something big was coming. Everyone, and I mean everyone, court officials, cops, you name it, had a pistol on them. And guess what? The entire Allen clan was lurking at the back of the courtroom, locked and loaded. Yeah, the whole dang courtroom was like a powder keg ready to blow. Now, what happened next is still up for debate, but one thing's for sure. It turned into the deadliest day in U.S. justice history. Floyd was sitting there in the middle of the courtroom when the head juror read the guilty verdict and recommended a hefty fine and a year in the slammer. It went dead silent. Floyd slowly stood up, looked at the judge, and said, "Well, folks, I ain't going." Nobody knows who fired the first shot, but all hell broke loose with bullets flying from every direction. In just 90 seconds, it sounded like a war zone in there. Floyd got hit early and dropped right on top of his lawyer, who told him, "They're gonna kill me if they keep shooting at you." Meanwhile, witnesses say the Allen clan at the back of the courtroom was blasting away like Custer's cavalry at Little Bighorn. They even shot the jury foreman dead. The sheriff took 5 bullets and didn't make it. The prosecuting attorney was killed too. Even a 19-year-old bystander got caught in the crossfire. And guess what? The judge was shot dead right there in his seat. All hell broke loose. People were running for their lives. Floyd, wounded as he was, pulled out a hidden pistol and joined the firefight. 7 others got shot as the chaos spilled out onto the courthouse lawn. The Allens hunkered down behind a Confederate statue, reloaded, and kept firing. Floyd got his hip shattered by a gunshot, but managed to hobble out of the courthouse, only to get shot again, this time by the court clerk, and it shattered his knee. But wounded as he was, he still kept shooting back. All in all, 5 folks were dead, and 7 were hurt. Floyd was too messed up to make a run for it, so he holed up in a hotel. The rest of the Allen clan got out of town on horseback. When they finally started hauling the dead bodies out of that courtroom, they found a handwritten note still in the judge's pocket. It said, "If you sentence Floyd Allen to jail, you'll be dead before sundown." Now, folks, that wasn't an empty threat. It was a promise kept. The whole mess unraveled in just 90 seconds, leaving that courtroom and the area around it scarred with 57 bullet holes. And believe it or not, even today, you can still see 2 of those bullet holes on the courthouse steps, serving as a chilling reminder of that day, a reminder of how things can go from zero to chaos in the blink of an eye. Now let me tell you, this incident didn't just stay put in rural Appalachia. Nope, it went global. Newspapers from all around the world put this shocking story right on their front pages. It was one of those moments when the wild and lawless reputation of Appalachian outlaws took the spotlight on the world stage. I mean, people from not just one country but the entire planet couldn't look away. After that crazy shootout, there was a nationwide manhunt, and I'm talking about a relentless pursuit to bring these folks to justice. The whole Allen clan ended up as stars on those wanted dead or alive posters, and the whole nation was on the hunt. Now, the next morning, law enforcement nabbed Floyd at a nearby hotel. He was so banged up, when the cops burst into his room, he was out of bullets, so he grabbed a knife and tried to do it himself before getting arrested. But catching the rest of the Allens, well, that was a whole different ball game. Some of them went hiding in the mountains. Others hightailed it out west. It took months to round them all up. The last 2, wouldn't you know it, were finally caught 10 months later, way out in Iowa. And here's the kicker. The very last Allen to get nabbed turned out to be none other than Wesley Edwards, the guy who started this whole mess with that famous red ear of corn and that kiss. Once they caught Sidney Allen, they didn't go easy on him. He got slapped with a hefty 35-year prison sentence for his role in that 1912 courthouse massacre. And it wasn't just him. One of his nephews got 27 years, another got 18, and yet another got stuck with 15 years. Got even darker for his brother Floyd and nephew Claude. They got the death penalty and were electrocuted in March 1913. Can you believe it? The funeral had a whopping 5,000 people in attendance. Now, poor Betty, Sidna's wife, had a tough time after her husband was locked up. She had to hustle and take up odd jobs around town, doing housework and laundry to make ends meet. Then in May 1912, the state swooped in and seized their family home because of those wrongful death suits. Betty and her daughters had to pack up and leave the beautiful house they'd called home for less than 2 years. Sidna, on the other hand, was stuck behind bars until 1926, when they finally granted him a pardon after 13 long years in the slammer. Fast forward about 80 years, and that house changed hands more times than you can count. But in 2005, someone with a soft spot for history and nostalgia donated the rundown place to the Carroll County Historical Society. They had big dreams of restoring it to its former glory. In 2015, they rolled up their sleeves and started working on it, breathing new life into the old place. Today, you can even swing by the Sidna Allen home every once in a while for a tour or to catch some local events. It's come a long way since its dark past. That kiss set in motion the infamous courthouse massacre of 1912, a calamity that's now etched in the history books. This thing made headlines for a solid 30 days before another tragedy stole the world's attention, the sinking of the Titanic when it hit an iceberg in the Atlantic. Talk about a roller coaster of events, huh? Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey into the haunting history of Appalachia's deadliest family, a saga of violence, betrayal, and survival that spans generations.